How many people actually have good relationships with their mother-in-law? I've often wondered about that, given my rocky relationship with my mother-in-law, Mary. Don't get me wrong, I never disliked Mary. In fact, I always wanted to get along with her. But from the very beginning of our marriage, Mary has been bending my intentions out of shape. My husband and I got married 4 years ago. We met through mutual friends and hit it off right away, starting to date. On our third anniversary, he proposed. He's not much of a talker, but he's always been kind and calming, a real rock for me. So when he proposed, there was no hesitation. I said yes, and we happily tied the knot. As for my father-in-law and mother-in-law, I never had any particular thoughts about them. During family meetings, our conversations were always pleasant. No snide comments or anything. I figured we'd just keep a healthy distance and get along fine. Then came our first Christmas after getting married, and that's when the drama started. At the time, I was pregnant with our daughter. While I wasn't showing much yet, I was trying to take it easy because it was my first pregnancy. But when we arrived at my in-laws' house for the holidays, Mary immediately put me to work preparing the Christmas dinner. My husband was busy drinking with my father-in-law, Bob, and didn't notice how I was being treated. Mary had me cooking, cleaning, and running around nonstop. When I tried to rest because of the baby, she would say, "What are you doing just sitting there? You need to know your place. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off." She would force me back to my feet and keep ordering me around. I followed all her instructions, yet the next set of orders came instantly. So much for relaxing during the holiday break. I never expected our first visit to the in-laws' house to be this exhausting. By the time we got back in the car, I was completely drained. My husband should have noticed what was happening between Mary and me, and it frustrated me that he didn't seem to care. But he had been enjoying his time talking and drinking with Bob, so maybe he just wasn't paying attention to me. I couldn't bring myself to confront him about it. After that, our daughter was born, and during the following summer, we went to my parents' house. My parents live about an hour away from our apartment, just like my in-laws, so we visit them every few months. However, Christmas at the in-laws became an annual tradition, but the pressure to visit them often increased after our daughter was born. It might just be because they want to see her, but for me, it's been a source of stress. Every time I go to the in-laws, I know I won't be able to relax, and Mary will always have some sort of task for me. I knew all too well what I was getting into, and if it were up to me, I wouldn't have gone. But my daughter was still young, and I couldn't just leave her behind. My husband, as clueless as ever, didn't seem to notice that Mary was making my life miserable. The only one who seemed to get it was Bob, but he's practically invisible at the in-laws' house. He never says anything to Mary. Mary knows this, so she doesn't openly harass me when my husband is around, but if Bob is there, she'll make snide remarks. On top of that, she has me prepare meals and then serve them only to my husband and Bob, saying, "We'll eat later. We have chores to do." Then she eats in the kitchen, leaving nothing for me. If a situation arises where we all have to sit at the table, she'll eat my portion of the side dishes and say, "Emma, you said you didn't like this, remember?" Saying so, she didn't get me a side dish. My husband will just genuinely look surprised and say, "Oh, you didn't like it?" I'm just genuinely surprised. Mary turns to him and says, "See, you have to keep track." Emma is so picky, which is nonsense. I'm not particularly picky, and I generally eat what's given to me. But dealing with Mary's subtle harassment had started to feel tiresome. I'd only managed to eat one meal during a 2-night stay. Such things were commonplace. It had gotten so routine that I started bringing my own emergency snacks like sweet bread and cookies whenever I go to the in-laws' house. I would just eat them in the kitchen afterwards since no meal was prepared for me anyway. Seeing this, Mary says, "Isn't it a bit much to bring your own food? Shouldn't a daughter-in-law show some restraint?" She mocked me. But by then, I had learned to tune her out to some extent. Sure, it still irritated me, but I no longer felt like a failure as a daughter-in-law. This continued for several years after my daughter was born, and by the 5th year of our marriage, I was pregnant with our second child. We went to the in-laws' house for Christmas that year, as is customary. But for some reason, my husband was acting a bit strange this time. As soon as we arrived at the in-laws' house, Mary was on me as usual. Emma, can you help with the Christmas dinner? That's what I was told. Knowing that helping really meant doing it all myself, I simply said, all right. Just then, my husband, who usually starts drinking with Bob right away, seemed to have been listening to our conversation. No, Emma can sit. Mom, Emma is pregnant with our second child, he kindly said. Even so, when I tried to speak, my husband sharply snapped, just sit down. He yelled. I was shocked to see him so furious. It was unlike his usual calm demeanor. However, just as I was about to sit, Mary chimed in. Look, things go faster when women handle these tasks. Emma helps me every month, so just sit down, okay? Come on, Emma! Unable to do anything else, I ended up being bossed around by Mary as usual. But today was different. My husband seemed off. As we headed to the kitchen, my husband followed. Upon arriving, he asked, Mom, where's Emma going to sit? You're going to help too, right? Mary quickly fetched a chair and set it in front of me, saying, Here, sit down, Emma. You're pregnant after all. She was uncharacteristically kind. All the while, my husband just stood there, silently observing. Although he didn't interfere, he watched us intently. But Mary grew restless and tried to get my husband out of the room by suggesting, Why don't you go have a drink with Dad? My husband, however, didn't budge. Our daughter's fussing caught Mary's attention. Listen, Betty's crying, go soothe her. Finally, my husband left the kitchen. Immediately, Mary sighed and said, Oh, I'm tired. Emma, just finish the rest yourself. Stand up. Pregnancy isn't an illness. She snatched the chair from me and sat down. But Mary's relief was short-lived. My husband returned, carrying our daughter. Mary, caught off guard, tried to stand up and ended up falling with the chair. My husband glared at her. Why are you sitting, Mom, while Emma is standing? He said in a cold voice. Frantically, Mary answered, Oh, my back just started hurting a bit. I just switched places for a second. She hurriedly returned the chair to me. Thanks to my husband's supervision, Mary actually helped with the Christmas dinner prep. And we finished in half the usual time. Still, my husband remarked, this was much quicker than usual, even though you both should be working on this every year. He made such a mysterious comment. Mary, without replying, simply said, I'm going to start preparing dinner. Why don't you go to the living room with Betty? She tried to smile as she said this, but her son didn't budge an inch. Instead, he said, Mom, why don't you want me in here? Is there something you're trying to hide? Mary was clearly flustered, but managed to stammer. No, not really. Then he sighed and said, Call me if you need anything and return to the living room with our daughter. Once she confirmed he had left, Mary shot me a glare. Did you say something to John? I was equally surprised. I never thought my husband would behave like this. I haven't said anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Exhaling a sigh, Mary said, Fine, whatever. After dinner, you'll be cleaning upstairs. You know the drill. You do it every year. After that, I prepared dinner, and as usual, Mary served my husband, Bob, and herself first. But today was different. My husband insisted. We won't eat until Emma joins us, thwarting Mary's plan. So we all ended up eating together. He kept adding more side dishes to my plate. Emma, you're pregnant. You need to eat well. Usually Mary would give me less food, assuming I disliked certain dishes. But she couldn't intervene this time. Emma, are you sure you like that? You don't have to force yourself to eat. She tried to snatch the dish away from me. No, Emma eats what she's given. It's better for the baby if she doesn't have food preferences, my husband said, so Mary couldn't say anything more. After dinner, I usually do the dishes by myself, but this time my husband stepped in. I'll do it today, Emma. You sit down. He grabbed the dishes from me and headed to the kitchen. Seeing this, Mary whispered, letting John do that. You're a failure of a daughter-in-law. Go clean the upstairs. That's what she said to me in a whisper. As much as I didn't want to share a space with Mary, I was about to head upstairs when my husband stopped me. Emma, where are you going? I didn't know how to respond. And before I could say anything, he seriously asked, Did Mom tell you to do something? No. Before I could say more, he took my hand and led me back to the living room. He looked angrier than I had ever seen him before. Then in front of Mary and Bob, he began to speak. I misunderstood because Emma didn't say anything. I thought she was getting along with Mom. Mary looked shocked at his words. What have you been doing to Emma, Mom? He asked. Looking flustered, Mary responded. What are you talking about? Emma and I get along just fine. Right, Emma? She looked at me, seeking agreement. Well, about that. Before I could elaborate, my husband spoke again. Every time we come back from visiting here, I notice Emma looking down. I was concerned, but didn't press because you always seem cheerful, Mom. You haven't been harassing Emma, have you? Mary's face flushed with anger. I haven't done any such thing. Emma, did you say something unnecessary? She lunged at me, but my husband intervened. Enough, he shouted. I've always been treated well by Emma's parents, so I assumed you were kind to her as well, Mom. But Emma looks miserable every time we come back here. It's true that being at my parents' house might make her feel a bit uncomfortable, but that goes both ways. Yet, I've never felt unhappy when I'm at her parents' place. They're really good people. My husband's eyes were filled with tears. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but tear up too. My husband looked at Mary, who was visibly uncomfortable, and said, Mom, can you really face Emma's parents like this? Can you honestly say you treat Emma well? Just then, Bob stood up and apologized to us. I'm sorry, Emma. I also noticed that Mary had been distant with you, but I didn't say anything. I'm equally at fault. I'm truly sorry. Hearing this, my husband turned to Mary. Mom, you should apologize to Emma too. While saying sorry won't fix everything, it's a start. But Mary wouldn't even look at me, let alone apologize. Seeing this, my husband sighed deeply and said, If that's how it's going to be, Mom, then fine. We won't be coming back to this house ever again. Mary looked shocked. That's not fair, is it? She pleaded. Ignoring her, my husband began packing our things. Mary started sobbing uncontrollably, but no one, not even Bob, comforted her. Let's go, Emma, my husband said, picking up our daughter and calling me. Mary collapsed on the floor, crying, and Bob just sat there, head down. In that awkward atmosphere, we left my in-laws' house. Ever since, Mary has tried to call my husband multiple times, but he's blocked her number. He's cut off all ties with his parents' home and hasn't been back. Instead, we've been visiting my parents more frequently. At first, my parents were puzzled by our increased visits, but they welcomed us warmly each time. My husband often says, Emma's parents are truly wonderful people. I think he feels guilty for the tough times I endured at his parents' home, but I'm not concerned anymore. I have no stress now that we've stopped going there. In the end, I owe my current happiness to my husband's actions back then. I'm truly grateful. From now on, I want to create many happy memories with my husband, our daughter, and my parents and continue to walk a happy. Don't nobody care about your business. My plan comes first before anything else. My daughter's birthday parties are biggest priority. If you don't get her gifts right away, I'll ruin your daughter's funeral. Deafening yell from my mother-in-law. Regretting picking up the call from my mother-in-law at the funeral, I was shaking with anger. My name is Amy. I'm a housewife in my mid-40s with a daughter who's in high school. You might think a high school girl would be fussy about makeup and fashion, rejecting clothes her mother buys, but my daughter is different. She gets along with me and gladly wears the clothes I buy. She's a considerate and kind girl, but she's not like most girls her age. She can't lead a normal life, putting on makeup, dressing up, falling in love, and enjoying her student life. It's tough. Are you okay? Your fever, yeah, it's a bit down. Want to eat something? I'm not hungry. I don't want anything. You shouldn't say that. If you don't eat, you won't have any energy. I'll prepare some soup for you. Okay. As I worry over my daughter who is bedridden with fever, I continue the household chores. My daughter Hannah is sickly and suffers from a weak constitution. There's a medical term for what she has, but I'm not going into details here. A week after Hannah was born, her umbilical cord fell off and blood gushed out of her. We took her to the hospital where they found she had a certain disease. Since then, despite numerous treatments, she has never fully recovered and has been living with the disease. Regular hospital visits are a must, and due to the side effects of her medication, her health often deteriorates. During severe periods, she has to be hospitalized. Since becoming a high school student, she's hardly been able to attend school. By any standard, it's unlikely that she'll graduate at this rate. Nevertheless, Hannah goes to school on days she's well. On those days, she tries to be like a normal high school girl, fussing over her hairstyle, which brings a smile to my face. She doesn't wear makeup because it's against the school rules. A diligent and good girl. Even when she's suffering from illness, she strives to live with a cheerful spirit. I am proud to have a daughter like her. My husband is equally smitten with our daughter. If she becomes bedridden, he's quick to say, "I'll take the day off work and look after her." Of course, I have to give him a little push and send him off to work. We need him to keep bringing home the bacon or we'll fall into a financial crisis. When I assure him that I'll take good care of Hannah, he reluctantly heads off to work. That's our everyday life. We're worried about our daughter, but our family is in good spirits, and I have a strong bond with my husband as well. I was blessed living a peaceful life. But there was one person who wasn't pleased with our situation. Hannah's running a fever again? It's just pitiful. I wonder who she takes after. Mother-in-law, what brings you here today? What's the matter? Can a mother visit her son's home? You're such a cold-hearted daughter-in-law. A frail granddaughter and a demon for a daughter-in-law. Lord, if I could only have the post-retirement years that I dreamed of. Yes, the person who's unhappy with our household is my mother-in-law. She frequently visits our home, which is just 3 bus stops away, and constantly spews her classic passive-aggressive remarks. She's enjoyed tormenting me ever since we got married. Now she's also unpleasant towards Hannah. Doesn't she find her own granddaughter adorable? My son never ran a fever this frequently. Amy, isn't this something from your side of the family? Mother-in-law, as I've explained countless times, Hannah's illness isn't hereditary. It's... No, I'm sure your family's genes are playing a role here. I always knew taking you into our family was a bad idea. My mother-in-law seems to be fixated on belittling my family lineage, and her snide remarks never end. Eventually, I've grown accustomed to dealing with her, realizing that arguing is a waste of time. I let out a sigh, grab the freshly made soup, and head to Hannah's room. Hey, I'm not finished talking yet. I could hear her yelling from behind, but I just ignored her. Once I entered Hannah's room, her voice became faint. Grandma came over again, didn't she? Right, same old mother-in-law bashing. No helping it, I guess. Grandma's just... My daughter Hannah lets out a wry smile, but I know she understands. There's no way she can't hear my mother-in-law's loud voice. Yet Hannah never speaks ill of her grandmother. On the contrary, she'll make a guilty face and say, "I'm sorry, Mom, it's because of me." Hannah, it's not your fault at all. She's not at fault in the slightest. Yet Hannah apologizes to me. I don't want her to feel this way, so my husband and I always greet her with smiles. We create a cheerful atmosphere, not wanting her to dwell on negative thoughts. But my mother-in-law destroys that atmosphere in an instant. As I hug Hannah tightly, I bite my lip. Her thin body, So unlike a healthy high school girl. Feeling Hannah's warmth, I feel a sense of relief, but also realize that I must start keeping a distance from my mother-in-law. Days occupied with taking care of my frail daughter. On the rare days she goes to school, I worry nonstop. I took back our house keys from my meddling mother-in-law. Days filled with endless quarrels with my ranting mother-in-law. My husband working hard for our beloved family. My laughing daughter, Hannah. Despite everything, they were peaceful days, and I thought they would last forever. I don't know why I believe that. There's no such thing as forever. Everything that begins must also end. On a rainy summer day, Hannah fell ill. Unrelenting heat. The doctor looked grim as he reviewed the test results. I held my trembling daughter, Hannah, in my arms, and then she was admitted to the hospital. Summer vacation had begun, and by the time it ended, Hannah was still in the hospital, still receiving treatment. Those were incredibly difficult and painful days. Hannah looked like she was suffering so much. Even so, I believed she would recover. She would surely get better. More than anything, Hannah herself believed that. But Hannah passed away. Dad! Mom! I love you! Those were her last words before she embarked on her far-off journey. Looking up at the dreary sky as the autumn rain continued to pour, I was in tears. The tears wouldn't stop. It was raining during the funeral, too. It felt like the sky was crying for me as I was too busy to even shed tears. The tears I shed on the day Hannah passed away have now dried up. I was that busy. My husband, too, had taken time off of work and was rushing around. I was swamped with contacting relatives and Hannah's school. That's the only way I could cope. I couldn't stand it unless I was busy. The loss I felt from losing Hannah was that immense. Many people came to the funeral in the rain. Even though she didn't go to school much, many of her friends came to pay their respects. And they all cried. There were kids who screamed and cried out in disbelief. Some broke down crying, saying they would love her forever. Watching them, I felt a perverse sense of happiness. Everyone loved Hannah. Knowing that she was a child who was so loved, I couldn't help but feel happy. Many people spoke to me. And they all praised Hannah. My parents hugged me as they cried. I couldn't help but break down in tears. It was then that my phone, which was in the pocket of my black funeral attire, vibrated. I had my phone on me in case someone needed directions to our funeral's location, so I quickly stepped away from my seat and looked at the screen. The caller ID showed that it was my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had already passed away, and although I had contacted my mother-in-law, she hadn't come to the hospital. When Hannah was in her final moments, claiming it was impossible because she was far away, she said she couldn't attend the funeral today either because she had something important to do. But I wondered, would she really say she's coming after all? Even someone like her might want to say goodbye to their grandchild. So I answered the phone, but I instantly regretted it. Amy, what on earth are you doing? She yelled at me. Ha! I'm at Hannah's funeral. What? Stop joking around and get over here right now. To your place? That's impossible. What are you talking about? Right back at you. I told you I had something important to do today, didn't I? Hurry back and help me out. Ha! I don't have anything more important than my daughter's funeral. Don't nobody care about your business? My plan comes first before anything else. What on earth is she talking about? First of all, as a mother, my daughter's funeral is the most important thing now, and it's wrong of my mother-in-law to not even care about her grandchild's funeral. My mother-in-law had always been adamant about not going to the funeral, no matter what my husband said. Why do I have to help her out with her stuff? If it's more important than your granddaughter's funeral, why don't you handle it yourself? You're my daughter-in-law. You're supposed to help me. I don't understand what you mean. I'm celebrating my super precious daughter's birthday. There's nothing more important than this in the world. Excuse me? I couldn't help but take an extraordinarily long time to respond. Ha! What did she just say? Mother-in-law's daughter, That's my sister-in-law, isn't it? My sister-in-law, Sandy. I remember she lives in some incredibly remote part of the world where the only means of communication is through a phone that hardly ever gets reception. Because of this, while we did send an email about today's funeral, we have no idea when she'll read it. So, what's this about Sandy's birthday? Ha! What about Sandy's birthday exactly? Sandy's coming home after such a long time, and coincidentally, it's her birthday too. We have to celebrate it grandly, don't we? Like I care! So I need to thoroughly clean my house and prepare a huge feast. So come over here fast. But as I said, I'm in the middle of a funeral right now. I don't care about that. My daughter is more important than my granddaughter. Also, bring a present with a budget of over $500. Hurry up! If you don't bring any gift right now, I'll ruin your funeral. Click! I hung up on her. I couldn't stand to listen any longer. If I had to hear any more from my mother-in-law, I felt like I'd march over there with a baseball bat. Just how selfish can my mother-in-law be? Your daughter over your granddaughter? I'm not saying they should be compared, but to say your daughter is more important? More important than a funeral? She must be kidding. I told my husband Mike everything that had happened, and we decided to ignore her. Mike tried to contact Sandy, but either she was still in the plane, or we just couldn't reach her. Pulling myself together and regaining my composure, I returned to shedding tears at my daughter's funeral. The day after the funeral, Sandy visited our place. She read Mike's email and flew here right away. She apparently thought it would be faster to come home than to try to get in touch while traveling from where she lives, but it took her a great time to get here. In the end, she didn't make it to the funeral, Sandy bowing her head in apology. After paying her respects at the altar, she shared various stories with us. There were stories I had never heard before about my daughter and Sandy, who we hardly ever got a chance to see. Listening to that, I found myself reminiscing about my daughter when she was little, and once again, I started to cry. In the end, my mother-in-law didn't even bother to come to pay her respects. My sister-in-law, Sandy, deeply bowed her head and apologized for this. I'll do something about my mom, she said before leaving, but I wonder what she meant by that. Then, a few days later, the reality that my daughter was gone still hadn't sunk in, and I found myself in her room. I gently stroked her study desk. The room, untouched since her death, was filled with so many memories of her. Just as I felt like I was about to cry again, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Startled, I quickly wiped away my tears and was speechless as I looked at the monitor. To my surprise, it was my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, who had angered both my husband and me with her inappropriate remarks on the day of the funeral. She hadn't even come to pay her respects, and even after a few days had passed, she hadn't shown up. What does she want now? I had no intention of opening the door, so I responded via the intercom. What can I do for you, mother-in-law? Oh, Amy, please help me. Just after I was left puzzled by her unexpected plea for help, I might end up joining my granddaughter if this keeps up. Please help me, she exclaimed, saying something unthinkable. Wondering what was going on, I reluctantly opened the front door, and my mother-in-law fell in. What's going on? Help me! My daughter! My daughter! Ah! While I was tilting my head, not understanding what she was trying to say, a figure suddenly came into my view. Well, here you are, Mom! The figure was Sandy. She had a smiling face, but somehow it gave off a silent pressure. Eek! She's here! Ha! What? What? Seeing the pale face of my mother-in-law, who screamed at the sight of Sandy, I was completely stunned. What on earth is happening? Oh, come on, don't say things like, she's here, it's rude. See, Mom, it's your cute daughter, right? No, not cute at all. What in the world is going on? Just until the other day, she was talking about her daughter and her birthday being more important than my daughter's funeral. What happened in just a matter of a few days? While I stood there, bewildered, Sandy handed something to our mother-in-law. Don't worry, the next part is much easier. Here, you just need to put this on your head and go about your life. Saying this, Sandy put it on my mother-in-law's head. She shook it off and hid behind me. I'm not wearing that. Why not? People will think I'm a weirdo if I walk around with that on my head. Wondering what on earth it was, I looked at the object that had fallen to the floor. It was a mask. Not the kind of mask you would see at a fair, but something, I don't know, a mask that you might see worn by a tribe living deep in Africa during some strange ritual. The kind of thing a shaman might like. And why does Sandy have something like this? Why put it on my mother-in-law's head? This mask is used for fortune telling where I live. Sandy explained in response to my question. It has an interesting look. It's a great craftwork that has been passed down since ancient times. I was stunned. Well, yeah, looks like it. So you're going to put this mask on top of my mother-in-law's head? Not on her face? If it's on her face, she wouldn't be able to see anything. This isn't an ordinary mask with holes for the eyes. I mean, if it did have holes in them, I wouldn't mind letting her wear it on her face. And what happens when she puts it on? Oh, you didn't know? This mask has a demon-repelling effect. As if I would know about such an effect. A demon repellent? Exactly. You see, no matter how hard you think, she's clearly possessed by a demon, right? With that, Sandy pointed at my mother-in-law, her own daughter, saying such a thing. So this is what she meant by I'll do something about my mom. So if she wears this for a few days, I think she'll definitely become a normal human being with morals. I've been trying several methods for the past few days. A different method? I had her wear a necklace of garlic and run around the neighborhood. Isn't that for vampires, not demons? Or are vampires also demons? I'm not quite sure, but oh well. But what's with the running? Is that why my mother-in-law has been looking so worn out? That must have smelled terrible. Garlic isn't that bad unless you cut it open, you know. That's not really the point, but that's beside the point. The issue is that she wore that and spent a few days that she was running. I really wish I could have seen that scene. Do you want to see the pictures? Oh, yes, please. Sandy has pictures. What a pro! You guys, what are you so happy about? Show a little more sympathy for me. My mother-in-law started to complain as Sandy and I were laughing and looking at the pictures. I almost forgot she was here. Why do we have to show sympathy for you? Sandy looked up from her phone and glared at my mother-in-law. Why? Because you're my daughter. If you want sympathy from your daughter, why don't you become a person deserving of sympathy? Do you think there's anyone else as sincere as I am? Where's the good in someone who dismisses their grandchild's funeral as whatever? Sandy exclaimed, her mouth wide open in anger. When I rushed home and came back for my niece's funeral, I find you here just lounging at home. And when I asked if the funeral was over, you boldly said you didn't go. I thought maybe you were sick, but you were just doing push-ups to show how fit you were. Push-ups? She wouldn't even go light an incense at the wake. I don't care about my birthday. Screw that. What are you talking about? It's a parent's duty to celebrate their child's birthday. I've never heard of a grandmother prioritizing her daughter's birthday over her grandchild's funeral. Their shouting match was getting so intense that Sandy and my mother-in-law were both panting heavily. That's why I'm saying we need to cleanse this rotten character of yours that's like you've been possessed by a demon and start over. Sandy cried out at the end, tears suddenly rolling down her cheeks. It's pitiful that Hannah had a grandmother like you. Her words stuck in my throat. Ah, Sandy loved my daughter too. Even if the time they spent together was short, there was no doubt that Sandy loved my daughter. Holding back the tears that threatened to spill, I stared hard at my mother-in-law. She faltered for a moment under my gaze. Mother-in-law? What is it? You didn't do anything for my daughter when she was alive, did you? And I'm not talking about giving her stuff. You didn't even care about her, did you? So what if I didn't? There's no way I could have doted on such a frail child just because she's my granddaughter. But my daughter, she adored you. Ha! At my unexpected words, my mother-in-law was at a loss for words. I told her to wait a moment and went back into the house. From my daughter's room, I took that and returned to my mother-in-law who was still at the entrance. Then I handed her a letter. What's this? It's a letter from my daughter to you. Eh? My mother-in-law looked back and forth in surprise between me and the letter. In my hand was a letter, certainly addressed to Grandma, in my daughter's handwriting. My mother-in-law tentatively opened it and checked the content. As she read on, her eyes widened and before we knew it, tears were welling up. No! No! I didn't do anything for Hannah. I was never kind to her or showed her love. Crying out, my mother-in-law collapsed to the ground on her knees. Picking up the letter that fell from her hand, my sister-in-law also read it. Sorry for not being a healthy granddaughter. I'll try to be stronger so don't hate me. I love you, Grandma. Hannah, even though she was such an unloving old woman. Hannah was a kind child. Yes, she truly was. At my murmuring, my sister-in-law nodded, tears streaming down her face. Tears wouldn't stop from my eyes either. And then, I'm sorry for being such a terrible grandmother. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Hannah. My mother-in-law was crying her heart out, bowing deep on the ground. The three of us kept crying for a long time. After that, my husband who came home to see us crying was taken aback. My sister-in-law explained briefly and then took my mother-in-law home. Despite her shaky steps, my mother-in-law tightly clutched onto the letter from Hannah. A few days later, my mother-in-law said she wanted to pay her respects at Hannah's memorial portrait, but I firmly declined. However, I told her it would be fine for her to visit the grave after the burial service was over, which is planned once the mourning period concludes. My mother-in-law said quietly over the phone, I'm sorry. No matter how much she reflects and regrets, I can't forgive her cold attitude towards Hannah while she was here and certainly not what happened on the day of the funeral. I plan to continue being almost entirely estranged from her and I guess my mother-in-law has sensed that. The pushy and sly old woman that my mother-in-law was is nowhere to be seen anymore. My sister-in-law went back overseas where she currently lives and my husband keeps contact with my mother-in-law to a bare minimum. My mother-in-law, now leading a lonely life in her old age, has developed dementia. Luckily, we quickly found a retirement home and now she lives there. Of course, I don't visit her and my husband only goes when it's necessary. According to my husband who had to go to the facility recently, my mother-in-law keeps murmuring, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Hannah. Even hearing that, I feel nothing. No matter how many years have passed, I can't forgive her and I don't even want to. But then I think, in my gaze is a picture of Hannah, smiling happily. If it was Hannah, that kind girl, she probably would have forgiven my mother-in-law. No, she probably never even held a grudge in the first place. She was such a kind child. Mom, I love you. I thought I heard her voice. And gently wiped my... All right then, watch the back for me, okay? You are good, still good, a little more, My mother-in-law said that she was going to park the pickup truck, but she actually backed her car straight at me. She said that she accidentally stepped on the gas instead of the brake pedal, but one small mistake could have led to a major accident. Does she realize that? Well, if it's a mistake, there's nothing I can do about it. I thought that way, but she kept doing the same thing again and again and she hit me really hard at the fourth time, and I ended up with cracked ribs. Enough already! What the heck does she think I am? My patience was reaching its limit, but a few days later. Kaya! I've had enough, so I didn't go to help my mother-in-law with parking, but she ended up crashing into a shed. She was asking for help, but it was time for me to get back at her. I just packed my things and left. I am a housewife and I also work. I live in Tokyo with my husband. We met through work, and because we had a great chemistry, we got married right after we started dating. After we got married, we were living a normal married life, but one day, a year into our marriage, my husband called me out of the blue. What is the important thing you wanted to tell me? Actually, my dad has passed away, so my mom is left alone. What? Your father has passed away? Today, my mom called me while I was at work. I'm going to see her now, but we might have to live with her from now on. With your mother? Well, I'll explain everything in detail later. I was really shocked that my father-in-law has passed away, but he was quite old and had been ill, so it wasn't unexpected. It was inevitable, but I had two concerns. The first concern was that my husband might become emotionally down due to his father's passing, and second concern was that there is a possibility of us living with my mother-in-law in the future. Though I had these worries, I had no time to dwell on them as I was busy with funeral preparations and other matters. Starting next week, we'll be living with my mom. I'll take over my dad's company, and you'll become a full-time housewife to support my mom. Please take care of her. Ha! Moving! It's already decided? I have to take over my dad's company, and also it would be difficult for my mom if she lived alone. Although my husband didn't seem overly saddened by his father's passing, as for the other concern about living with my mother-in-law, it went as expected. Supporting my mother-in-law after losing her husband might be a family duty, but I had a reason why I can't be positive about it. That is my mother-in-law's bullying. She opposed our marriage, and even after we got married, every time I visited my in-laws' house, she bullied me in a way so that nobody else can see it, and the memory of those days came back to me. Despite my reservations, we went ahead with moving to my in-laws' house. Hello! I hope we get along. You're so late. Oh! You didn't bring any gift? Gift? You're going to live here, and you didn't even bring a single gift? I didn't know that you had no common sense. I'm sorry. I understood what my mother-in-law was saying, but we had to move suddenly, and I had barely slept while packing our belongings. We had to sell large furniture and appliances, and it took time to dispose of them. I didn't have any time to buy gifts. I don't know if she didn't understand that, or if she made such remarks knowing the situation. From the first day of moving in, I wasn't in a great mood. I had to quit my job, and from now on, I have to spend the daytime alone with my mother-in-law. I couldn't imagine what kind of life it would be, and I had absolutely no positive expectations, but in a bad way, my predictions were not betrayed at all. I expect you to take care of all the household chores and cooking from now on. All of them? Of course! Why would I do the housework instead of you? I have to support my son's work, so I don't have time to do chores. Understood! But just because I'm not here, don't you dare slack off. If I find out you're slacking even a bit, you'll regret it. It felt as if I was becoming the household's exclusive housekeeper. I am your son's wife. Wouldn't it be better if we tried to build a better relationship? Maybe she doesn't like me, but the decision to live with my mother-in-law was made by my husband and her. So, I thought she didn't have to be so hostile towards me. However, to avoid further complaints from her, I tried my best to do the household chores diligently. Yet, my mother-in-law's demands went far beyond my expectations. Why haven't you cleaned the shed outside yet? It's your job, isn't it? The shed! It's become like a storage dump, so hurry up and clean it. Also, wash the pickup truck while you're at it. All right! I'll try to finish the household chores earlier tomorrow to do it. Tomorrow? Do it today! You don't need any rest, right? You're an ugly woman who can't even do household chores properly, so you should work like a slave for us. It's already past 8 in the evening, and if I start washing the truck and cleaning the shed now, I wouldn't be able to finish even by tomorrow morning. My husband is indifferent even after he saw his mother and me in this situation. There was no one who would help me in this house, so I had to obey my mother-in-law. I never expected my husband to not stand by my side like this, and I was stunned by the extent of my mother-in-law's bullying. If this is how it was going to turn out, I should have never accepted to live with her. I deeply regretted my decision. Since then, my mother-in-law has been making me redo the housework over and over, and she has also given me physically demanding tasks. My life was miserable. One day, she called out to me, "Hey! Come here for a moment. I want to park my pickup truck, so can you watch the back for me?" Okay. My mother-in-law has been using the company's pickup truck as if it were her own car. Usually, she parks it herself, so why did she ask me to help today? Well, there was no point in questioning that. I went out as she asked and was helping her park the truck. Then, suddenly the truck in reverse came straight at me. Ouch! What are you doing? I just mistook the gas and brake pedals. There's no need to get so angry. But it was extremely dangerous. It's just a scratch. You're making a big deal out of nothing. What do you mean nothing? One small mistake could have led to a terrible accident. Yet, she showed no remorse, smirking while saying that. I was about to lose my temper, but I managed to restrain myself. However, from that day on, similar harassment continued multiple times. Can you assist me with parking today as well? Understood. Lately, you've been making quite a few mistakes, so please be careful not to get confused with the brake and accelerator. If you make the same mistake again, I recommend that you return your license. Ha! Are you making fun of me? I don't mean that, but I do mean that you need to be careful. When you misstep on the brake and accelerator, it could lead to a serious accident with injuries or worse. Enough with the nagging. Just take your position. I couldn't let this harassment continue without doing anything, and I decided to express my thoughts, adding some sarcasm. My mother-in-law became instantly displeased, but I didn't care. I thought it would be fine if this stops her from harassing me, but it didn't turn out that way. Here I come! Kia! She backed up the truck with tremendous force, far surpassing her previous harassments. While in the past, she would stop just before hitting me or a small bump, this time, she rammed into me with great impact, and I ended up being slammed onto the shed behind me. I couldn't take a defensive stance at all, and the rear of the truck hit my ribs directly, causing excruciating pain. It hurts! I need to go to the hospital. What? It was just a minor collision. Your reaction is so exaggerated. Please! It hurts! Are you trying to play the tragic heroine? If you're so good at acting, why don't you get hit by a luxury car and claim compensation? You can make some money and you can become useful that way, right? After she said while smirking, my mother-in-law went back inside the house, leaving me behind. I was in so much pain that I couldn't get up from the spot, and cold sweat poured out of me. However, I managed to call a taxi somehow, and I was taken to the hospital. Fortunately, there was no bleeding, and though I had severe pain, I was still able to walk, so I didn't need an ambulance. However, I was diagnosed with a fractured rib at the hospital. I never thought it would be such a serious injury, and my anger towards my mother-in-law reached its peak. What does she think I am? I am not a toy that the wretched woman can play with. I will never forgive her, I thought, but I had to stay in the hospital for a while. Thankfully, my mother-in-law never visited me at the hospital, so I didn't have to see the face of someone I didn't like. However, I was discharged after 1 week, and went back to my in-laws' house. Regarding this incident, how do you intend to take responsibility? I won't let this slide. Taking responsibility? What are you talking about? Isn't that my line? Because you decided to get hospitalized on your own, who do you think did all the household chores this past week? And my son didn't even come to see you, did he? He was angry too, you know? Is that so? Is that your instruction to him? I didn't tell him not to visit you, but he was complaining that there was no one to cook meals for him. Besides, I told him that it was an accident due to your instruction mistake. He might scold you when he comes back. Even though my mother-in-law's malicious actions led to my injury and hospitalization, it seemed she had no intention of reflecting on it at all. My husband didn't come to see me either, and I couldn't understand what he was thinking. I can't live with this family anymore. I am sick and tired of living in this house with such awful people. Well then, I'm going to see my son for a bit. You probably haven't fully recovered yet, but please continue to take care of the household chores as usual. My mother-in-law said, and she left the house smirking as usual. I heard the engine sound of the pickup truck and knew she was about to leave. I was thinking that this was my chance to gather my belongings, leaving only the divorce papers, and get out of here. And that's when I heard a terrible scream from her parking spot. Ouch! Accompanying the scream was the sound of something collapsing with a crash. Wondering what had happened, I hurried to the parking spot while holding my ribs. There, I saw my mother-in-law, who had crashed the pickup truck into the shed. What? What are you doing? Did you take some drugs and hallucinate me? Or have you gone senile and really misstepped on the brake and the accelerator? Shut up! Hurry! Help! Do you think I'm going to help you? You left without helping me. Moreover, as for this, it's your own fault. I never thought you'd become an elderly person who would misstep the brake and the accelerator. I don't want to hear a joke. Perhaps she had really mistaken the brake and the accelerator. She had hit with considerable force, and the front windshield was shattered, leaving the truck in a terrible state. But why did she think I would help her? My mother-in-law left me without helping me in a similar situation. She showered me with horrible insults and left me, so there is no reason for me to help her. She wouldn't be able to complain even if I don't help her because she did the same to me. When you drive next time, make sure not to misstep the brake and the accelerator and run over someone. It would be a hassle if you were sued for compensation. Well, I handled it on my own in a similar situation, so you handle it on your own too. I said and returned to my room, leaving my mother-in-law. Then, I quickly packed my belongings and left the in-laws' house. I could hear some groaning-like voice from the parking spot, but I ignored it completely. However, I wouldn't feel comfortable if I just leave her and something happens to her, so I told my husband. I went to my parents' house, and while I was telling my parents everything that had happened, my husband called me. Hey! My mom's surgery has just finished and she is resting now, but are you fucking kidding me? What are you thinking leaving her like that? What was I thinking? You shouldn't be complaining because she did the same thing to me. I was hit by a pickup truck that she was driving and I ended up having a broken rib and she left without helping me on top of that. It's okay that I didn't help her, right? Besides, I contacted you before leaving, which was more than what your mom did for me. That's not the fucking issue. You don't have a trace of humanity, do you? My husband seemed quite angry about the whole series of events, but isn't he getting angry at a wrong person? I reported him when the incident happened so nothing really bad would happen to her, so he should be grateful if anything. Why the hell are you getting so angry with me? You should be blaming your own mother. Of course I'm furious. Because of this injury, my mother might end up in a wheelchair. Her leg was fractured in a strange shape and she might have some paralysis. Is that so? So what? It's none of my business, though. Don't mess with me. If you had taken her to the hospital properly, maybe there wouldn't have been any problem. Don't you feel any responsibility? Responsibility? Why is he trying to push all this onto me? When I was hospitalized, they didn't even come to visit me. Whatever the reason may be, his own wife had broken bone because of his mother, so isn't it normal for him to come to visit me in the hospital and apologize? I don't want to hear about responsibility from someone who can't even do that. If you're going to talk about responsibility, then shouldn't your mother also take responsibility? What do you mean? As a matter of fact, your mother caused me injury. However, since she was driving your company's truck, maybe you are the one who should take the responsibility. When I said that, my husband fell silent on the phone. I could feel his agitation even over the phone. You sound flustered. Are you getting scared because I suddenly mentioned the responsibility? It's the same as what you were just telling me, isn't it? And you asked me to take responsibility, but I didn't do anything to your mother. This accident was entirely her fault, right? Even though it was a pickup truck, it should have had a rear drive recorder. All the evidence should be there, right? Well, just wait a minute, Wait! What do I have to wait for? No matter how much you think or make excuses, the facts won't change, so there's no point in struggling. As I firmly stated that, my husband fell silent again. Since it was pointless to talk to such a person any further, I hung up the phone and blocked his number. And the next week, I informed them that I would be claiming compensation for my mother-in-law and my husband's company. My mother-in-law had been using my husband's company car, and the incident happened after she delivered parts for his factory, so it was during work hours. Soon after, I received a call from my mother-in-law's number. Hello! I saw the compensation claim documents earlier, but what's the meaning of this? There's no way I can pay that. That's right! Moreover, my company has nothing to do with it. We're family. Are you kidding me? Family or not, that doesn't matter. You need to take responsibility for what you've done. And causing such a serious injury to a family member like breaking their bones. That's just unacceptable, don't you think? I don't consider someone like that as family. I said and hung up the phone again. I had no intention of interacting with them anymore, so I blocked my mother-in-law's number as well. I made sure there was no way for them to get in touch with me, and I left the rest to the lawyer. After that, thanks to the efforts of my lawyer, I received compensation from both my mother-in-law and my husband's company. We also got divorced, and I cut ties with them completely. They know where I live, which is my parents' house, but we requested a no-contact order during the divorce. So if they tried to approach me, I would report them to the police immediately. Maybe they know that, and there has been absolutely no contact from them since then. In addition, because we lived in a rural area, news of the incident spread rapidly, and the performance of my ex-husband's company declined. Furthermore, the rumors that she had bullied her daughter-in-law and even caused her serious injury has spread in my mother-in-law's neighborhood, and they are feeling quite uncomfortable. This rumor was true, so my ex-husband and his mother couldn't deny it. Also, because they had to pay me a substantial amount of compensation, they had no savings. They couldn't sell their old and poorly located family home either. The company's performance kept declining, and they kept losing money, so they didn't have any money to spare. In the end, even though they wanted to move because they were feeling really uncomfortable due to their neighbors, they couldn't even leave that place. On top of the company's declining performance, it became difficult for my ex-husband to go to work because he had to take care of his mother, who was now in a wheelchair. In just 6 months after the incident, the company went bankrupt. The company my ex-husband inherited from his father was a subcontractor at the factory, and it was a company that was not essential to their clients. As a result, many clients decided to sever ties with them and look for other options. After that, they've had no money, and the neighbors have looked at them with disdain. My ex-husband has to take care of his mother every day. Both of them have been living a stressful life. By the way, my injuries have fully healed, and now I live happily with my family thanks to the compensation I received. It's true that what you need in life is a reliable relationship, like a family that supports you. Crash! A loud noise rang out, and I immediately rushed to the living room. There, I found my mother-in-law Abigail, breaking dishes. My name is Sophia. I live with my husband William. We met in college, dated through our student years, and got married a little while after graduation. We rented an apartment for just the two of us, but Abigail often came over uninvited. Abigail, what are you doing? Yet again, she had shown up without warning, and for some reason, she was smashing our plates. I made her stop and asked why. These cheap dishes aren't fit for a meal. That was her explanation? Breaking our plates for that reason? It's our business what kind of plates we use, isn't it? But Abigail insisted that the kind of plates we used revealed our financial situation. It seemed like Abigail was eager to label me as poor. Sure, I didn't come from a wealthy family, but that doesn't mean I should be looked down upon. What's with that look? You got a problem? Abigail openly showed her anger towards me. Once, I had tried to stand up to her and had received a lecture lasting over 3 hours, so now, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. In the end, we settled it by agreeing to buy better plates. Is that what happened? While cleaning up the broken plates, my husband William came home. William usually takes my side, even he thinks Abigail's behavior is out of line. Yet, he can't stand up to her either. Abigail had been a strict person since he was young, and it got worse after his father passed away. I wonder if the family gathering next weekend will be alright. I hope Mom doesn't go overboard. Yes, a family gathering is planned for next weekend at my in-laws' house. We were worried that Abigail might give us a hard time there too. So, That's how we went into the family gathering full of apprehension. Welcome, you poor thing! As expected, Abigail threw those words at me as soon as I arrived. The family gathering had just begun, and let me tell you, Abigail was out for blood. She went on and on about how poor people like me have no basic table manners or any sense of proper dining, adequate. She made it her mission to embarrass me in front of everyone. William tried to come to my defense, but Abigail wasn't having any of it. She continued her verbal assault. There I was, at my in-laws' family gathering, still on the receiving end of Abigail's nastiness. What a poor woman she is! The moment she said this, the room went silent, and it felt like my mother-in-law had lost it all. I had had enough. I stood up in the middle of the family gathering. Everyone looked shocked. Abigail was quick to speak. Sophia, where do you think you're going? We're in the middle of a family gathering. Hearing this, my irritation reached its peak. I finally snapped back at her. I can't dine with someone as uncouth as you, Abigail. The room buzzed with whispers. Abigail's face turned beet red. She then loudly berated me. How dare you? You're just my son's wife, how insolent! Family members tried to calm her down, but Abigail was unstoppable. Clearly, my defiance had struck a nerve. William also looked visibly disgruntled by her behavior. Being the wife of my son means you're here to be harassed by me, especially when you're poor. It's unthinkable to stand up to me. Abigail seemed to be living in her own world, pushing her so-called common sense onto everyone else. I thought just because it's your common sense doesn't mean it's everyone else's, you know. It's pretty telling how she's lived her life. If she can't even understand that simple fact. As I was getting ready to leave, Abigail tried to stop me. Wait, you can do. I'm not done making you miserable. Is she serious? Even in this situation, she still wants to continue tormenting me? She is so insensitive that it's gone beyond infuriating, it's downright baffling. Family members tried to rein in the irate Abigail, but she wouldn't stop. Then Abigail, as if she had done nothing wrong, blurted out, "Come on, she's a gold digger who married William." A thief! So anything goes, right? A thief? Me? What on earth is she accusing me of? When did I ever steal from her? To call someone poor and then to label them a thief, she's truly a rude person. Apparently, Abigail sensed my discontent and let me have it again. What's that look for? Don't joke with me. You call me vulgar and then act like you're the victim? I mean, if it's vulgar, it's vulgar. The way she openly demeans people in a room full of family? What else would you call it? Even now, so far relatives tried to calm Abigail down, but she showed no signs of stopping. In fact, she was berating those trying to stop her. It's no wonder the relatives are starting to get fed up. You, the poor one, give William back. You're the reason he left. As Abigail ranted, she seemed to increasingly blame me for her grievances. She seemed to think it's my fault that William left. Mom, that's an unfair accusation. William tried to refute her, but Abigail wasn't listening. You're being deceived by her. She's gonna take everything from you. If William himself is denying it and she's still not listening, then there is really nothing that can be done. Enough is enough. A loud voice cut through. I turned to see it was one of the relatives. They seemed quite angry that Abigail had ruined what was supposed to be a family gathering. Even after being scolded, Abigail wasn't backing down. Why am I the one getting blamed, Dad? She's the bad one. This irrational grudge is getting tiresome. It's not like I did anything wrong. The relatives continued. By any logic, you're the one at fault for causing this chaos. Yeah, exactly. I felt comforted as more people began to side with me. Even Abigail seemed to start feeling cornered. What's wrong with you all? I'm not the bad one. Do you understand the pain of having your son taken away? But we have been saying it's not like that. Wouldn't clinging to your parents' home even in your 40s and 50s be more troubling? It's about time you understood that eventually everyone has to leave the nest. Finally, the relatives spoke in unison. Get out! You're ruining this! They tried to eject Abigail from the family gathering. I hadn't wanted it to go this far, but it seems they couldn't tolerate her ruining the long-awaited reunion. The look on everyone's faces was one of sheer anger. Certainly taken aback, Abigail started saying some unbelievable things. Enough already, William! Divorce this woman right away! Whoa, what? How did divorce suddenly become the topic? She's the one in the wrong and yet she's directing malice towards us? She really should stop. It's because of a woman like her that everyone's mad at me. She's the root of all of this. She brings bad luck. Now she's calling me a bringer of bad luck? How many derogatory terms does she have in her vocabulary? I'm starting to get curious. But honestly, listening to any more of this will just make me angry. I have got to put a stop to this soon. Abigail, just give it up. You better leave before you make things worse. As soon as I said that, Abigail started yelling again. What? This is my house. You should be the one to leave. You never should have married William. Divorce him. At this point, there's no room for constructive dialogue, that's what I thought. I really didn't want to do this, but I have no other option. After confirming with William and getting his permission, I revealed a secret to Abigail. All right, Abigail, I'm going to stop the monthly payments to your family. Are you okay with that? The room went dead silent for a moment. Ha! Finally, Abigail murmured, clearly not understanding what I was saying. What? The payment? Isn't that something William is handling? You have no right to interfere. Abigail seemed to be misunderstanding. The truth is, it was not William but me who had been sending money to the family each month. I own a couple of small businesses, you see. The profits from those are what I have been sending to you, but after today, I can't let your behavior slide, so the payments stop. Upon hearing this, Abigail's face quickly turned pale. Her face has gone from red to pale. She's having a busy day, isn't she? Wait, no one told me about this. You've been sending money? What about William's job? Turns out, Abigail didn't even know that William had quit his job a while back to focus on housework. Focusing on harassing me, she didn't even know about her own son's situation. Beyond disbelief, it's just pitiful. Seems like Abigail realized she's in hot water and started asking William for help. William, do something, convince this woman. Abigail clung to William, but William pushed her away. Mom, you've been rude to Sophia considering all that's happened. Isn't this kind of deserved? William seemed quite angry about how I'd been treated until now, perhaps hurt by her son's defiance. Abigail began to cry. Don't say that, convince Sophia for me. No matter what she said, William's answer was no. He had already warned Abigail repeatedly not to mistreat me, but she never listened. Only asking for help when you're in a tight spot won't fly. Then Abigail started asking the relatives at the venue for help. Everyone, did you hear that? This strict daughter-in-law will stop sending me money. I won't be able to make ends meet. Isn't that awful? Desperate times call for desperate measures, it seems. It's a display of tenacity. However, just like William, the relative said, it's your own fault, you're responsible, and didn't take Abigail's side. Abigail looked desperate, but she still had the energy to angrily retort, how cold-hearted. I'm in a difficult situation and not a single one of you will help. It seems the relatives had something to say too. Abigail, did you ever help us when we were in trouble? Faced with that, Abigail was speechless. Apparently, she had never done such a thing. You even mocked us, let alone help. We have no intention of helping someone like that. It looked like the relatives held quite a grudge against Abigail too. I always thought her personality would make her many enemies, but I never imagined not a single relative would be on her side. It's ironic. Don't say that, I'll help you from now on. Just help me this once. Abigail tried to cling to the relatives, but everyone looked annoyed. Well, of course, only asking for help when it suits you and crying while doing it, that's obviously annoying. Not a single voice said that they would help Abigail, only those who pushed her away. Eventually, Abigail started lashing out unfairly at the whole family. What a bunch of jerks! I have been begging here. The least you could do is help me out. Really? Maybe if you had helped others before, you wouldn't be in this spot. This endless shifting of blame. She's probably spent her whole life acting this way. Finally, she started berating me again. Sophia keeps sending me money. Divorce, fine, but the money has to keep coming. What an unreasonable demand. There's no way I could agree to that. Hearing this, family members and even William spoke up. That's way too much even for you. Stunned, Abigail responded. What? It's not my fault. Sophia is the one to blame. She kept repeating her claim. I'm amazed she can still say that after making everyone so angry. Soon, the atmosphere shifted towards kicking Abigail out. Cornered at the entrance, she protested. Wait, this is my house. Why should I be kicked out? Ignoring her, everyone pushed Abigail out of the door. You are a nuisance. Just go away already. With that, Abigail was finally out. Wait, please, help me, I was wrong. We could hear her cries from outside, but no one paid any attention. After that, we all enjoyed the rest of the evening with our relatives and William. By the time the gathering ended and everyone dispersed, Abigail was still crouched outside. Ignoring her, everyone went back to their own homes. We did too. True to my word, I stopped sending money to Abigail. She was left scraping by on just spousal benefits, eating nothing but beans every day. It's a valuable lesson for someone who's acted so unreasonably her whole life. As for William and me, we upgraded from our small apartment to a nicer one and continued to. A useless freeloader who can't even walk is not welcome here. What are you doing? I exclaimed. Samantha pushed me, wheelchair and all, down the stairs for more than 10 steps. Though I successfully broke my fall and managed to avoid any serious injuries. Without offering any assistance, Samantha sneered at me. You're just a jobless bum, just get a divorce from my son already. Fine, I replied. Little did she know that I was earning $800K a year. She had no idea about the future that awaited if I were to leave. She even brought my son into the conversation. Oh, and we'll be taking custody of Ken, too. No, I won't let that happen. Stop joking. There is no way that you can properly raise a child. I was determined to protect my son at all costs. I couldn't possibly leave him with this devilish woman. This was when I decided to seek revenge against her. I don't need a home like this, even if they wanted me. A month after I left their house, I received a barrage of phone calls from Samantha. Perhaps she had finally realized the gravity of the situation, but it was already too late. My name is Shelley, and I just celebrated my 45th birthday last month. I live with my husband and our 5-year-old son. I met my husband, Tom, at a party when I was 35 years old. Wow, you're a fashion designer? That's so cool! It's really not all that impressive. I still have a long way to go. I could never do something like that. Maybe you could be a good designer. I'm not particularly skilled at socializing, so I must have seemed out of place at the party. But Tom approached me to ease my discomfort. My first impression of him was thoughtful and genuine. My parents have been bugging me lately to be more independent, it's so annoying. You're living with your parents, right? Yeah, but I'm getting up there in age, and they want me to live on my own. Why don't you come live with me? At that time, we hadn't officially started dating yet. I still don't know why I said such a thing, but it just came out of my mouth spontaneously, like a reflex. Maybe I was attracted by something about him, somewhat, being vulnerable and childlike. We officially started dating when he moved into my place. Hey babe! When we have a child, my dad will give us some money. Ha! What do you mean? I don't really get it either. It's like a celebratory thing, I guess. But I don't know. To be honest, I didn't have much of a desire to get married. I also thought having a child would be difficult, given my age. However, my husband was quite optimistic and seemed excited about the idea of receiving some money. At this time, we had already been dating for 4 years, and I was approaching 40. No way! I was in the bathroom, clutching my head. I also did not plan anything ahead carefully. It seems I'm pregnant. Really? That's great! Then we should get married, right? Yeah! Unexpectedly, on my 40th birthday, I discovered I was pregnant, and we soon arranged our marriage. At this point, my work was on a stable path, and I was willing to invest time for my baby on the way. However, after having our son, my husband's attitude started to change. During the pregnancy, my husband didn't seem any different from before. But you did really well. Hmm. What's wrong? The moment my husband looked at our newborn son, he uttered something extremely absurd. Is he really my child? What are you talking about? Everyone in the room froze for a moment at his words. He doesn't look anything like me, does he? You can't tell, he's just been born. Oh well. I'm heading back to work for now. With that, my husband left the room, without looking back. I couldn't accept his words. My husband hardly spent his time with our son and time just passed by. After all, our son Ken had turned 3. Where's Dad? He said he was going to be late because of work today. But you have Mom here with you, okay? Okay. Last year, Tom was here for Ken's birthday. But it felt like he was just there out of obligation. And this year, he claimed to be working late. I am not even sure if he is actually working late. So, that evening, I had spent modest yet joyful moments just with my son. I'm back! I heard the sound of the front door opening. Hi, Tom! Hmm. Did we have something today? It's Ken's 3rd birthday today. I answered with a firmer tone. Oh, I forgot! I stopped him on his way out of the room. Can't you at least say happy birthday to Ken? Why? He glared at me. It's your son's birthday. Why you don't understand? I'm tired from working late. I'm going to bed. Hey! My husband didn't say a word to our son and went into the bedroom. Of course I was mad, but I was more concerned about our son. I timidly looked at my son and he was acting like nothing has happened. He is only 3, but he seemed to understand the whole situation. It's okay, Mom! He said with a smile, and I could see tears in his eyes. From this point on, I ceased all expectations from my husband. I put our son to bed and sat alone on the couch. Then my husband came over with a smile and said, I forgot to mention, my dad gave us 10 grand as a baby shower gift recently. Oh, when was that? About 2 days ago, I think. So I thought we could go on a trip sometime. That's quite sudden. Isn't it good to do something like that occasionally? I couldn't quite understand what he was thinking, but I accepted the plan, hoping it would bring some joy to our son. And on the day of the trip, we were planning to go on a hot spring getaway. Not even 10 minutes after leaving home, my husband suddenly said, I'm sorry, but we have to cancel this trip. I don't understand. Ken was looking forward to today. Oh, come on! I can't do anything. My boss invited me to play golf. You should just decline. What? Stop giving me orders. You can't even manage household chores and parenting effectively. He snapped back at me for some reason. He even started looking at his smartphone while driving. Stop driving with your phone. I'm just replying to him. Can you just be quiet for a bit? And in the next moment, it happened. Our car drifted into the oncoming lane. As soon as I realized that we were going to crash, I turned my body toward the back seat, trying to shield Ken. Then, I lost consciousness upon impact. Shelly? Are you okay? I woke up to a voice calling my name. There stood Samantha. Where am I? What are you saying? We're in the hospital, of course. I recalled something important. What about Ken? Is our son all right? Samanata replied with a smug smile. The kid is fine. He seems to have only minor scratches. Thank goodness. I breathed a sigh of relief. However, Samantha suddenly became angry. It's not thank goodness at all. Tom has a broken bone, you know? And it's your fault, apparently. What? What's all this about? He told me that you suddenly distracted him while he was driving, didn't you? I didn't do anything like that. I felt anger welling up in me upon realizing that my husband was providing false testimony. I tried to sit up, but couldn't. My arms were somewhat responsive, but everything from the waist down was unresponsive. What's wrong? Samantha, seemingly aware of my condition, grinned. You know something, don't you? I asked. No! I don't! See you later, she said with a smirk. I was overwhelmed by a sudden rush of cold sweat. A doctor had come in right after Samantha left. What he said was beyond my imagination. Will I be like this for the rest of my life? Unfortunately, the chances of recovery are close to zero. So, you mean I'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? But there must be a way to walk again. We'll provide you with rehabilitation, but there's no guarantee you'll regain the ability to walk. My vision darkened, and I couldn't think straight. It took over a month before I could leave the hospital. During that time, it appeared my son had been staying with Samantha. As for my husband, he never visited me in the hospital even once. Thanks for coming, all the way today. No problem. If you ever need help, I will always be here. You're the only one who says that. But it's surprising your husband didn't come. Well, I kind of expected that. With the help of my coworker Isabella, I returned home. I have a house my parents left me, which I had made accessible in preparation for my retirement. I thought I could manage to live there. Starting tomorrow, my mom will live here, too. Why? Why? It's for your care. I can't handle it alone, and my mom offered to help. Show some gratitude. Even if that's the case, it's so sudden. Stop complaining. You've officially become useless now. You have no right to complain. From that point on, true hell began. What's with this house? It's spacious, but everything is so old. Thank you for offering help. Oh, you're here? I didn't even notice. Well, I will be taking care of you from now on, so be grateful. Samantha said that she would help with my care, but she hardly did anything. As I continued to live this way, I somehow managed to take care of myself for basic needs without help. Realizing that I am able to do things without her assistant, Samantha started to taunt me even more. If you can do so much, I'm not needed, am I? You can handle your life on your own from now on. But it's impossible to do everything by myself. Please help a little. Why should I do that? You can't work, you're useless. I am working, you know. Is that just your fantasy? After this, I decided to take on design jobs that I stopped for a while after the accident. I couldn't stay silent after being berated by Samantha. At times, I was accused of playing around, but I ignored it and focused on my work. My dedication was rewarded, and my work began to earn a reputation. The design you did recently received great feedback. The fact that it was designed for people in wheelchairs was groundbreaking, and it's become a hot topic in the company. Really? I came up with that idea by thinking about what I can do in my current situation. It was just a coincidence. Even if it was a coincidence, it's amazing. Plus, there's a magazine that wants to interview you, Shelley. My younger coworker, Isabella, was more excited than I was. Actually, having my work recognized is a great feeling. After that, I continued to produce new designs one after another, as if inspired by a divine force. With each high appraisal, my income kept rising. My husband seemed to catch on my success somehow. Lately, it seems like your work is going well. You must be earning quite a bit, right? I'm not really making that much. Stop lying to me. I know it. From that point on, my husband started coming to me, practically begging for money. This continued for about half a year. I quit my job. What? Why would you do such a thing? Well, it seemed ridiculous, watching you earn more easily than I do. So, just take care of everything about us from now on. Wait a minute. Oh, and don't tell my mom about this. Why not? Why? Don't you get it? I won't have a leg to stand on if you do that. I didn't press for further explanations. I was too baffled to say anything more. It is indeed absurd to make such a decision for the sake of fragile pride. During this frustrating time, Samantha suddenly suggested something to me. The weather is nice today. How about going for a walk? She said, out of nowhere. A walk? But I have things I need to do today. Those things aren't that important. Come on! Let's go! She pushed my wheelchair, insisting on taking me for a walk. I had never gone for a walk with her before, so I had a bad feeling about it. Where are we going? To a nice place. We've been out long enough. Let's go back. We can't do that. She seemed unusually desperate. She was heading towards a park, on top of a nearby hill. Perhaps due to her age, her breathing had become quite heavy. We've arrived. Isn't this view nice? It certainly is, but I couldn't fathom why she would bring me all the way here just to show me this view. As I was thinking this, I noticed a staircase in front of us. Suddenly, I felt a shock as if the wheelchair might tumble down from behind. It started to roll forward, gaining momentum, and I descended the stairs rapidly with it. The recent memory of the car accident flashed through my mind. I managed to fall back instinctively, but my legs remained unresponsive. I gazed up at the staircase. A useless freeloader who can't even walk isn't needed in our family. Weren't you doing that to me? Samantha sneered, standing at the top of the stairs, making no effort to help me. Her behavior resembled that of a villain in a story. You're just a jobless bum. Could you just hurry up and get a divorce from my son? With that statement, I understood everything. Still, there was no need for her to go this far. Understood! She doesn't know that a jobless bum according to her, is actually earning $800K. She'd have no idea what the future holds for her if I leave. She even brought up my son. Also, we're taking my grandson, Ken, with us, she said, as if she'd won some sort of prize. I won't allow that. I will be the one to raise Ken. Stop joking! You think you can raise a child in your current state? With that, she disappeared from my view. There's no way I could allow her to take my precious son, especially after knowing what kind of person she truly is. So, I decided on revenge. A house like this isn't worth a word from me. Even if you beg for me to stay. I was unable to get up on my own. I called someone. Shelly, is everything all right? I'm sorry for the sudden call. I need your help. All right. Where are you? I told her my current location and what had been done to me. 10 minutes later, she arrived by car. Are you okay? I managed to drag myself over here, but I'm quite exhausted. I crawled to the nearby bench. Why would something like this happen? It seems like I was really disliked. I responded wryly. This isn't something to laugh about. For now, I'll take you to my place. And so, I ended up staying at Isabella's house. The main concern was my son, Ken. Fortunately, it was only 2 p.m. I asked Isabella to pick him up from kindergarten, ensuring he was safe. Mom! Ken, I have an important matter to discuss. Mom is planning to live separately from Dad. Who would you like to live with, Mom or Dad? I want to be with Mom. I was relieved. He chose me over his dad. Now, I had the strength to go through with the divorce. I've made my mind to end our marriage. As expected, my husband called me at some point. Hey, where are you right now? I need some money, send it quickly. Sorry, but from now on, you'll have to figure things out yourself. What do you mean? I mean it as I said. Your mother kicked me out. I'm also planning to divorce you. Hey! Then, a month passed since I left the house. I received a call from Samantha. Thinking she's finally reaching out to me, I answered the phone. Hey, what have you done? What do you mean? Someone is at the house. Oh, I arranged for that. Because it's my house. What? Samantha sounded furious, but I ignored her and continued. Well, you didn't like that old house, right? Oh, and have you heard about everything from your son? What are you talking about? He is currently unemployed. What do you mean Tom is unemployed? Wasn't he working? Your son has been unemployed for a while now. Did you know? I've been covering all the expenses, by the way. I thought you were unemployed. You just had the wrong impression about my job situation. Want me to tell you how much I'm making? Samantha's voice wasn't as strong as before, and it was trembling. I'm making $800K a year. 800,000? That's impossible. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. Either way, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I immediately hung up and blocked her calls. I didn't want to hear her voice ever again. It makes my blood boil. I knew they would regret, for the rest of their life, that they let go of me. The thought of their faces full of despair gives me the energy to live even if I can't walk. It took some time, but I finally managed to divorce my husband. Samantha, after learning the truth, demanded an explanation from him. And then he... What? Help me! He begged. It seems like you're confused. We're no longer together. You're on your own. We've lived together all this time. You never helped with our child, and you had only minded your business. Say hello to your mother for me. I hung up, and of course, I blocked his number as well. I cut ties with them, but I'm not finished with Samantha. What she has done to me is a crime. I don't know what legal decision she'll face, but I can't help but feel a sense of excitement, thinking she might have sleepless nights. As for us, even if you move, call me anytime, and I'll come running. Just like last time? I teased. I'm joking, but thank you. Of course. Really? If you say that, then we'll count on you. You can count on me, my son, Ken, and I moved to a new place. It's been a tough journey, but my efforts in rehab are showing results. My legs are slowly regaining sensation. It might take a while before I can walk again, but I won't give up. Because I have my son, and he's the most precious thing.